I felt like I was channeling Antra. Usually, like she's the one that started blubbering when she told me that story. I felt like I touched the hand of God. That was so freaking beautiful.
So beautiful. And it was making me think of um, if we as humanity learned, if we exercised that muscle of what it takes to connect with another human being in that way, we could never commit the atrocities of what that man experienced in his life. Like we wouldn't have the capacity to do that. Like you can't cause that kind of harm to another human being when you have the capacity to connect with them in that way.
No, and it's another thing I wanted to ask her about her take on it. But we just ran out of time. It would have just been selfish for me. Like, Rabbi, can you tell me about but I love the interpretation of the Ten Commandments from the Dead Sea Scrolls. That it's not thou shalt not, they're not commands, they're signposts. When
Mm-hmm.
you take the Lord your God into yourself, when your gap is collapsed, thou shalt, it's not thou shalt, it's thou
Right.
shall. Like,
Right.
thou shall not murder, thou shall not dishonor, thou shall not you don't want to covet your neighbor's stuff because you got everything you need. The
Yes.
only reason to covet anybody else's stuff is because you think you need that to have the feeling that you have here, that you were born with.
Yes.
And I think maybe next time I'll talk to her about that. But it's thou shalt not steal. You wouldn't even when you're full of yourself, your God self, you wouldn't even think about harming another person. It doesn't
No.
happen. And
No.
that's the place you meet somebody like that old man and feed them. And it is an honor.
Yes.
It's not sucking any, it is giving you energy. It's filling you up to literally fill up another.
Yeah. Totally.
and
Absolutely.
and it's good for your biochemistry. It's anti-inflammatory. There are biochemical markers of a collapsed gap: oxytocin, serotonin, DHEA, antioxidant, all this goody stuff for you. It's everything she was talking about. And
Yeah.
it's not almost like she doesn't I don't know what I'm saying. I think it's like it's almost she doesn't have anything to teach anyone. She has a lot of reminding to do.
Yeah. She's just being, right. Like the word is for us to stop doing and being. And she's a human being
Yeah.
in the verb being.
Yeah.
Um, and when we can be in the present moment, when the left and right brain are synced,
Mm-hmm.
when we're in heart brain coherence, whatever all the terms
Yeah.
people want to use, she was just saying, like, being in that space, that's a complete space of resonance or coherence or grace. To me, that's the feeling of God's grace.
Yeah.
And like, but you got to be willing to let that in. And we're, many of us, so afraid or don't even know how to do it
Yeah.
because
Well,
we've been taught to live so divided.
to hold the gap open and
Yeah.
until life like kicks you down and like you're
Yes.
forced to experience the collapse, which is freaking scary. But what she's like, that's what happened to me. That's what has happened for you. And once you've touched that space, you know that that's all that matters. And
Yeah.
life will get you off track and you'll get tempted in other ways, but you're always trying to get back to that space.
Yes.
And what I see her doing is so people don't have to have some kind of travesty or tragedy or health issue or death or something like that in their lives. She's giving them these practical tools to help close, give them the courage, give them the resilience, give them the the map to
Mhm.
collapse the gap so that they can experience those things in a gentle way. you
And,
know
and it happens as quickly as you were talking about it. As soon as you're willing to go into it, the thing you're so fucking scared of admitting, as soon as you do, it's instantaneous.
Yeah. And you know that there's no other place you want to be but there. And you get
Yeah.
away from it. And you're like, oh yeah, that's how I get back there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
And
love
even
what,
if you lose your way along the way, you still remember now how to get back, right? Because we haven't, unless we exercise it enough. So I'm going to say Irma is an example of someone exercising it every day.
uh-huh.
For those of us that fall off and don't prioritize those things, you still now aren't as afraid after you've busted through it once. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I know this is going to be gone instantly. Now I know how to do this, and I
Yeah.
don't have anything to be as afraid of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what she said about, like now, because she's teaching these things to clergy
Yeah.
too, like people, and that's, and people who've believed one way their whole life. And actually they teach that same way. But when they hear the truth, it doesn't matter. When you hear the truth and
Mm-hmm.
all that upstream truth, that is the same theme and string between all of the world's religions, the upstream thing, the truth, then you're willing. It's like it makes the things that aren't true intolerable. Like you can't possibly go back to doing that again because you know it's a lie.
Right. And the only things that are true are the things that are based in love. If it, that's how it's always my gauge. If what I'm hearing, the way I'm hearing it, in any shape or form would create division or separation, then that's not truth and it's not love.
Yes. So
Right.
simple.
So it really is so simple, but you can get so caught up in the narrative. It can grab you for a second and then you got to pull yourself back in. I'm like, yeah, no, wait. Because truth is only based in love. Period. End of story.
Yeah. Love and wholeness.
Yeah.
Welcome to the RNegade Podcast, a revolutionary approach to continuing education for nurses who don't just do what they're told. We're shining a light on the renegades, the pioneers, the change makers of the medical profession. And as a pleasant side effect, nurses, you can get a continuing education credit for listening to this podcast. On today's episode, we are speaking with, I'm just going to call her Rabbi Diaz. You just heard the summary from Wendy and I. She blew our minds, and she will not only blow your mind, but open your heart. Nurses, enjoy Rabbi Diaz.
Hi there.
Hi, Karen, Wendy. Nice to meet you.
How shall I address you? Your
Irma's fine.
Your Highness?
No. Irma's fine.
May I please? I saw that I was reading through your information and I saw that you're a native Angelino. So I don't know if you're still there, but you're right down the street from me. So I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I could get together with her for lunch. And then I kept scrolling. I'm like, oh, there's no way she has time.
I do once in a while, as long as I plan it in advance, I'm able to do it. Yeah.
Well, you must enjoy being that busy, saving the world
Yes,
and things like
I
that.
do actually. I'm just I just get up in the morning and I'm just energetic and I just want to get going with all the things I have to do,
Were you always like
I've always
that?
been like that. Yeah. But I feel that's the way the two of you are. I can kind of feel a good energy, that you guys are just, productive and go-getters.
Yes. Oh, I will begin by saying my word for God is George. Because it feels like not always. There's times for the formal thing, but I feel like he's kind of like with me when I call him George. Her, whatever, George. But to your point, when you're following the purpose and the effervescence and the breadcrumbs that George lays out for you, there's like you could work 16-hour day and you have more energy at the end than you did when you start. If you're plugged into the mains.
Yes.
And you are definitely plugged into the mains.
That's cute.
Well, it's not cute. It's the way to live. It's like the secret, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a secret. It's the key. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Absolutely.
To me, it's the only way you could accomplish all the things you've accomplished for as many people as you've accomplished them for. If you can't do that unless you're plugged into the mains.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
Well, it's not me blowing smoke. It's like evidence in what you're doing. There is no I in team. I mean, like I would love to know. We're just getting right into it. There's sorry for no formal introduction. We'll do that at the end. I'll just do because nobody likes to hear their LinkedIn bio or their about page read in front of them. So I save that for the end. But
Okay.
as I was reading through all of your accomplishments and your tireless effort for others, I would love to know why. Like what happened? A lot of times I ask people who come on our podcast, tell me about something that made everything different from one day to the next. And then sometimes there's a variation of that, but that's exactly what went came to my mind as I was reading about all the things you do.
Oh,
What happened to you to make you so passionate about that? I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I just want to do this when I was a kid because I was bored and, it's like somebody saying, I love to sew. I mean, like,
yeah.
what
Yeah.
happened? What happened to you?
It kind of the best way that I can say it is that it found me.
Mm.
And so when I grew up, I was, and I mean, when I grew up, I was always around. My parents were very caring. My family was very caring. I was very blessed with a very, beautiful childhood, and all of that. But um, later in years, I went through some things in my teenage years and things like that. And so I feel like it found me, and the feeling of helping others and putting your fingerprints on somebody's purpose in life,
Oh,
the feeling of that uh, just engulfed me.
Mm.
And so it went into all kinds of different portals, if you will. It was kind of spiritual, and then it was, oh, physical. Let me try to help with wellness. Let me, it just went all over the map, in every crevice of what a human being is. I
Mm.
found myself finding open doors to touch it. And once I touched it, it did something for me, and it found me, and that became my passion. And
Mm.
that's the best way that I can explain it in simplicity. Of course, there was a lot going on in there, but yeah.
yeah. And I think a lot of people who hear you say that would be like, I want to help people so bad, but I'm so screwed up myself. How do I, there's so many things that I have to, I, uh, you know, speaking for a friend, I remember when I first started, leaving the nursing profession, there was this moment, it's like imposter syndrome. Like there's so many things that I have to improve upon myself. How could I possibly, in my brokenness, how can I possibly be used for this purpose that's so much bigger and so much better than me? How did you deal with, or did you have that, or did it just, did you have the confidence and did you just, did you have the faith that you would be able to, or did you have a moment like, I don't know, you just speak.
Yeah.
You're nodding, so I think you're catching my drift.
Yes, I do. Thank you. And because of my upbringing, I was very confident. So I do want to say that uh, my parents were always telling me, you can do anything you set your mind to. That kind of dialogue went on in our home for my brother and I. So that was a given. But I have noticed that, for example, in a grief group, when people are broken, they
Mm.
have a way to touch each other.
Absolutely.
And it becomes more powerful than someone that can't resonate with that brokenness.
Absolutely.
So yes, so when regardless of, you could be in a third world country, um, in orphanages, as I had the opportunity to be in, and be able to help families on the street and their babies and their children, and and there's something about, once you've touched that, and if you've felt certain things in your own life that you can resonate with, that you're able to just pour back into them, and build them and help them, and bring healing to them. And it's not magic, it's not anything, it's just who we are as human beings. So in your brokenness, you're able to resonate and do more for
Yeah.
someone that isn't, that hasn't gone through that.
Yeah.
Oh,
You have the experience to actually be the authority. I was going to say, I was remembering in the health and wellness world, it's like when you're teaching and working with people. It's like never ask them to do or take them places you would never go yourself.
Right.
So that brokenness, you've already been there yourself. You absolutely resonate with where that person is. You're almost the perfect authority to actually help that person. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I try, but in answer to your question, it's a very good question, because there are a lot of people that are so capable of helping others, and they don't think that they can, just because of what they've gone through. And it's so the opposite. It's so the opposite.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's just stick a pin in that and put a little framework. I was so excited to talk to you after I read the thing. I just jumped right in. Can you give us the what somebody, if somebody was introducing you on stage, kind of a thing, how did you get here? Tell us a little bit, like, where are you from? Where did you grow up? How did you get into the profession you're in? And just how did your trajectory lead you to where you are today?
it's a kind of a long story, but
We're here to hear
I'll try
your
to shorten it.
Well, so just to give a framework around my framework, we
Right.
want our audience to know about you, because we want your interviews, your expertise, your knowledge, your pioneering spirit. And we want nurses to be able to learn from you and their lives changed by your story. So tell us your story and take as much time as you want, whatever seems, just to kind of set the table.
Thank you, Karen. So I grew up in a Catholic home, but my mother's family is Jewish, Sephardic, from Spain. So I'm leading somewhere with that one. So I always had an interest in the Jewish culture. And even though I was going to Catholic school, private schools, I always had that. So as I grew up, and I was always very, very surrounded by faith, people of faith, dialogue, that just everything was faith. So I was very drawn to God, to George. I was very drawn to my faith, to all of that, and I ended up, fast forwarding now, I ended up going in a full-time ministry that grew leaps and bounds. I traveled all over the world, and I was able to, I preached in India, for example. I spent some time in India, and all of that just really, really resonated with who I am. But I always had in the back of my head that when I would go to my cousin's bar mitzvahs, I would be so moved. I would look at the tallis, the talits in the synagogue, and I was so moved by that. And so I looked more and more into that, because my family was Catholic and Jewish, found out that we were crypto-Jews, Sephardic, and that my family ended up, my mother's family was from Andalusia, from Spain, and my father's from Guadalajara. And so they they migrated to Mexico from the Spanish Inquisition, and on and on and on.
Oh, wow.
So, yes. So I say all that to say that what happened is, in the middle of this booming ministry, I decided I was going to go to rabbinic school. And because my mother is Jewish, or was Jewish, I was able to go in, and I didn't need conversion, because if your mother's Jewish, you're a Jew. So I went to rabbinic school, and I was ordained a rabbi in 2012. And so I was ordained a minister, and in the 80s and 90s, I'm dating myself, and then a rabbi in 2012. So all of that opened enormous doors for different people. Were very curious about me and curious about my story. And simultaneously, I was dealing with the political arena and working in different areas there, and working with the transition team for president, and just all these different things. And so it was all simultaneous, but the doors were just opening, and there was no closing them. It was just, I didn't even have to put an effort in it. And so that eventually led to me working as a chaplain, interfaith chaplain, teaching interfaith,
Mm.
And then that opened the door to wellness.
Well,
And
it
yeah,
seems it makes so much sense because just going over your career. I don't even want to call it career trajectory because it's just who you are. It's everything about you, but it's so it's an internet service is an international, intercultural, and interfaith language. So no wonder you could go into all those things because you just led with your heart and with service.
yeah,
So and when you're speaking and working with and serving people whose lives have been destroyed, or maybe they don't even know that they're destroyed because that's all that they've ever known is poverty and pain and being destitute and challenge. We call them growth opportunities here in the first world. And there it's like trying to find food for my child today.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that is an international, intercultural, interfaith language that
right.
all human beings can relate to. And
Yeah.
they're all lucky to have you. That
Oh,
sounds like an ending, but that's kind of the beginning. And then
thank
what
you.
happened?
Yeah. Just these doors opened first in the political arena, and I was a young woman, and just people were just taking me under their wing and just teaching me, and I wasn't asking for it, and I would find myself in meetings at the White House just wondering what I was doing there. And and they would ask me my thoughts about things, and it was incredible. I found myself in inaugurations and sitting in private boxes, and all these things just open the doors to people in other countries, leaders, to people that are very, very influential. And one thing led to another. It was like a domino effect. But everywhere I went, I was able to put something into someone, and that's what meant so much to me. So even the people that I can't mention their names that were in very high profile positions, I was able to help them with their marriages, with their children, with areas that normally they wouldn't open up to anyone, but they knew they could trust me, and they would talk with me, and they knew my background. They didn't. No one was saying, "Oh, she's Sephardic Jew. I don't want her," or she left her ministry to do this, and I don't want. It wasn't that kind of a
Quitter.
thing. Yeah. It was more of people that were more open, and I have a theory that the more secular people get, the more open they are
Inclusive. Yeah.
to what's happening and to changing. So yeah. So if you're very secular, like if Wendy and you are very secular, I have more of an opportunity to reach deeper in you than if you are set with man-made doctrines and ideals, and so it's almost like that's what's happening in the world. People are getting more and more secular, and while it looks scary, it looks like, at least as a person of faith, it's almost like it's opening the door
Yeah.
Yeah.
to touch more lives.
I think too, we get very divided, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's divisive because it gives
Yes.
us things to argue about, who's right and who's wrong in this way,
Yes.
that way. And I don't personally believe that's God. So God doesn't create divisive and divided environments. God is all inclusive. So I think the more we can be, I look at it like as a spiritual perspective, the more we can all enter the space from a spiritual perspective. You may have belief systems based on how you came into it, but being open to it's all God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. Wendy and I were talking about this after a podcast yesterday. Because I'm working with I'm starting to teach again because I've been so busy building this business for the last couple of years. I'm starting to teach, and I forgot it's like you can't see the forest for the trees. Like so for me, I grew up strict Catholic, and around 2011, my scaffolding collapsed. Like the rug, doubt was introduced into everything I held to be true. And then I was told, so I had this big kind of spiritual collapse, like everything. Well, if that's not true, then what else isn't true? And I've been buying this my whole life. Like it was pulling the rug out from everything. And then it was like, wait a minute. It's not the guy up in the sky that I'm praying to when I need something or if I have no one else to turn to. I'm God. Then we're all in trouble because I'm way too disorganized to be, like a part of God. Like I didn't get it. And it's like, okay, well, then I need to pray to somebody. Is it the grandmothers and grandfathers of the Four Directions or the Ascended Masters or what? I need to pray to somebody. And I found my way back to my original faith through like Richard Rohr, like upstream. So he's Catholic, but he's like he was saying the same thing as the Buddhists were saying, and the Kabbalists were saying, and the like all the upstream stuff before man takes it and specifies it and divides it and makes rules and regulations.
Yeah,
and that just in what you were just saying. You help people with their marriages, not only the people in the streets in all of the countries that you're going to and the mother trying to find food for her kids, but also just on a regular level. And I don't exactly have the language to put it all together, but you were the string, and in all of those things, your faith and what do you do with it now? Like if as I was reading through your history and your career and all of the things you've done, if somebody asked you, what is it that you do, Irma? Like, can you distill it?
Yeah. Well, I have my podcast. I'm doing grief counseling. Getting really, I have a lot of doctor friends that were corroborating on coming together for wellness solutions, and all of that. So I'm starting to work a little more in that area. And I do public speaking. I do a lot of public speaking, and I'll have like synagogues will call me and ask me to give a lecture on the Sephardic Jew, the Spanish Inquisition, crypto-Judaism, because a lot of them don't know about it. They know about the Ashkenazis, but they don't know about the Sephardics, Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit, give us a little glossary of terms? What's Sephardic? What's crypto? I've never heard crypto.
Because I'm thinking Bitcoin when you say that.
Crypto Jews. So in the Spanish, I'll just give you a quick example.
Yes,
So the Spanish Jews were kicked out of Spain in 1492, and they left. Some of them stayed and converted to Christianity, but the ones that didn't want to and didn't want their families harmed, because there was a lot of the Inquisition was very evil, and so they scattered the diaspora. They scattered to different parts of the Iberian Peninsula, and many of them, because they spoke Ladino, which is Spanish, Judeo-Spanish, and they spoke Ladino. They migrated to Spanish places. So they went to what was called the New Spain, for example, which was Mexico. And so if you go to Mexico today, there's a lot of Jews, and there's Jews that don't know they're Jews. They think they're just Latinos but they are Jewish. And if they looked in their background, they would find it because their families migrated. And so a crypto Jew is one that, for example, if I wanted to protect you as my daughters, I wouldn't tell you that you're Jewish, because there was a Mexican Inquisition as well.
Crypto.
And so they started killing the kids, the families, and burning them at the stake and all that. And so I would protect my little girls. So I'm not going to tell you you're Jewish. So that went on for generations. Those are cryptos, and they're crypto Jews. And so they for generation. So now you go to somebody and you say, well, Karen, you're Sephardic. Your mother was da-da-da. And you're like, Sephardic? I'm Catholic. What are you talking about? I'm not Jewish. So I want to interject that I do not encourage, I'm not encouraging people to leave their faith. I'm not doing that. But when I do give the lecture, I want to educate people on who we are as a people, and a lot of things that don't. So I learned all of that as I went along, and I watched my mother's family, and it was like some things didn't make sense. There were weddings with mariachi and with the Jewish. In other words, there was all these things that took place that were myths, and that's indicative of a crypto Jewish family. My grandmother.
They were crushing the glasses with the mariachi
Yeah,
band.
yeah. My grandmother's her sewing room in Mexico. I used to stay with her in Mexico. In her sewing room, she had Shabbat candles, and she had a statue of the Virgin Mary.
I love that.
That didn't make any sense, but to somebody that knows crypto-Judaism and knows, how that happens, then, or you find a menorah in the basement, you're like, what's this? Why is there a menorah in the basement? So to be a crypto-Jew is one that maybe from generations to generations, the chain of transmission stopped, and you stop telling your children for their own protection because of anti-Semitism and all of that they're Jewish. And so they don't know. And that's kind of how it unfolded. And in Mexico, you find that a lot. And then you find in Mexico City, it's a big Jewish community in Mexico City, so it's things that people don't know. So back to what I was saying, I'll get invited to go to synagogues to give a lecture about that. And I'm finding many of them don't know about it, even though they're Jewish. They know about the Ashkenazis. They just don't know about the Spanish Jews. And so that's one area. And another area is wellness. And I bring a lot of spirit into the wellness. For example, I'm writing a book right now on the duties of the heart and the duties of the limbs, which is an ancient Jewish teaching. And it's infused with Kabbalah. But it has to do with, for example, I'm here with you. And I feel like by the way, I feel very comfortable with you. I feel like I've known you. Both of you. You're just very, your energy is great.
Likewise.
But I'm here with you, but I'm all here with you.
Yeah.
So it's the duties so the limb is the largest, the limb is the largest one, the limb that we have. And that's where it comes, how we speak, what we do, it's
when you said limb, you were indicating speech,
but also our limbs. So in other words, if I was in person with you, I probably would have hugged you.
You're a nurse. What's the feeling you associate with going to the mailbox and seeing that notification that says your license is up for renewal in 90 days? Do you go, yes? Or, oh, right? Why? I mean, it's not like they're hard to get. You have 2 years and there's so much free stuff out there. And yet we drag ourselves across the finish line, kicking and screaming, because they suck. They're boring and antiquated, and the delivery mechanism is inconvenient. And the thing is, if you're a nurse, we love to learn. We're always listening to podcasts and audiobooks and YouTube videos because we're just curious. But we have to pick through this pile of crap so that we can remain a nurse. Well, we created RNegade.pro to change that. We wanted nurses to be able to get credit for the stuff that they're naturally inclined to do anyway. It starts with a podcast. And then we're creating courses, and we want everything we do to feel like what you're naturally doing. The research shows that that's how we learn and retain best. Check it out. Pick one. See what you think. So maybe when you go to the mailbox next time and get that notification, you'll have that, yes.
Yeah, so
I would have hugged you, but it would have been, yeah. But it would have been, my heart would have been in it.
Right.
So it's the duties of the limbs and the duties of the heart. So the teaching is if you're doing something and you're not all in,
right.
All the supplements in the world aren't going to help you.
No, it's inauthentic.
So take all the supplements you want, go to all the functional doctors you want, go to whatever you're going to do. But if you're not all in,
right,
you're off balance. And so that teaching is ancient, but it's very, very real, and people don't realize it. So they're not in what they're doing many times. I'm generalizing, and they don't feel accomplished. So they don't feel healthy. So go ahead and take your vitamin B. Go ahead and do, yeah.
You just you answered the question I was going to ask you, because it's obvious that knowing your history is very important, because you go around to synagogues and lecture about knowing your history and about the crypto Jews and what is it about knowing your history that lends to your health and wellness? Because those are two very important things to you. And I don't know where that question came from, but that's the one. And you started to answer it with the limbs thing.
Yeah, but it's because in Judaism, there's tradition, and big on tradition, right? but the teachings are phenomenal. And I'm not just talking about Kabbalah, I'm talking about just the ancient teachings, the writings are just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And so what has helped me is being able to really dissect that and to integrate it into health and wellness.
Okay.
For example, there's a teaching about two eyes. So the one eye, and of course there's a right and left brain, so we know all of that. But the one eye is the eye of judgment, the critical eye, and the other eye is the eye of what's known in Hebrew as chesed, which is loving kindness. It's light. It's positive. So the dialogue or the argument, if you will, or the debate between two rabbis is, why did God give us two eyes? Why do we have two eyes? Right? Because we need to have those two. So it comes down to, and I'm doing this very fast in a microwaved way, but it comes down to that when you're grieving, for example, going through a divorce, going through something that hurt you, you can't deny the left eye. You have to see it. You have to use your lens. You have to use that, but you must use both eyes. And in order to get through that and navigate through that suffering, navigate through that hurt, navigate through that, you must throw in chesed, the right eye, which brings light and positive. So you have that balance. So that's just a real simple teaching that you could bring, for example, to a grief group or bring to your own life. You know, when you're looking at something that you've been through as a child or as a young woman, and you can't deny it. So you don't close your left eye. You can't deny you went through this, and it was dark and it was hard, and maybe you're still navigating through it, but there's some light there, and so you throw it in, and you bring balance. Everything's about balance, right? And without that.
Yeah.
If your book was on Amazon right now, I would be like, have my phone down here and be pretending to look at you and like out of the corner of my eye, so I don't forget to order it. That is exactly the thing. It's spirit. Everybody we've talked to recently, we were talking about this yesterday too, is so hungry to talk about God. Mm-hmm. And I use the formal where that secular almost fear of talking about God. It was like there was this layer of hush over it for the last decade, and it was getting worse. But now people are, I feel like, moved, like I'm about to cry right now, because people are so hungry to talk about God, but they've lost their way because it's like there's a gap. And actually the conversation came yesterday because I talked to somebody who said the exact same words that I do, and I've never heard anyone say them before in the same way. And she said them exact same way. I don't like the mind-body connection term because it implies that there's two separate things and there's a connection, like a bridge. It's all one thing. And even secular and spiritual, it reminded me of what you were saying about the eyes. One's helping you navigate and see it, like reading a map, and one's helping you with the nuances and the staying true to your heart and true to God as you go through it. And here's yet another thing. You're giving this bridge between physical, tangible things that are attached to you to navigate this thing that is trying to get out of you. You know, to bring, I don't know if that makes sense. Those are the words I have for it right now, but I've got goosebumps and chills just talking about it. I swear I would buy that book right now. It is.
I'm in the process of writing it. So.
I have a question though on what you were saying about the eyes, because you kind of answered it, but I'm still curious what you think, because our left brain, right, is the very rational side, linear thinking. And the right brain's very creative. So I was thinking it would be the opposite eyes.
No, because the critical thinking is a judgmental. So the judgmental's on the left, and on the right is it's known as the one that brings light to your vision, brings light to what's going on in your life. And this is from ancient teaching. So and when I do the book, I'm going to bring in the left and the right and left brain to be able to elaborate a little bit, but that's a good point. But it's the critical thinking. So So, and let me bridge back for a second, because if someone's grieving that's watching, I don't want them to think that they can't be in denial. There is a time to be in denial at the beginning,
Sure.
and that's survival, and that's okay. But at a certain point, you have to use your left eye, and you have to realize this happened, and it hurts. My heart's broken, and I need to figure out how to get through it, and I can't deny that it happened. But then the right eye is, whatever it is you need to do. You take out pictures of your loved one that you lost, and you look at them and you smile the day you had a picnic, or you smile the day they hugged you a certain way, and it brings light into the truth of what exactly is happening. So so the whole teaching is, are you using both eyes? So if you're counseling somebody and you've taught them this, you ask them when they're talking to you about something, are you using both eyes? And they know what you're talking about. And sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not. Right. Or they'll say yes, and it's helped me. And so all of this, depending on what's going on in our lives, even forgiving somebody,
sure,
to be able to bring, all of that.
Sure.
And all of that has to do with our wellness. And so
present moment.
Yeah. And
right?
So that's what I told them the other day when I was speaking at a wellness group. I told them, go ahead and order all the supplements you want, spend all your money. But if you don't have this, you're not going to feel the wholeness. And you might get better in certain areas, physically, but you're not going to feel that wholeness, because you're not, it's the duties of the heart and the duties of the limbs from creation. It's what we need to do,
Can you talk more about just like throwing paint over the invisible man? When you say this, would you talk more about what this is? You said, well, it doesn't matter if you take supplements, doesn't matter what you do if you don't have this. What is this?
This meaning this reality, meaning this, you're still going to feel better in certain areas. I want to make sure I qualify that, because I don't want anybody getting upset with me. But in terms of the accomplishment, in terms of you feeling like you're fulfilling purpose, in terms of all of that. And I'll tell you where it really comes from. The base of coming is from what we call in Judaism Shema. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's that, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. That's where the root is in the Torah. And from there it's broken down into this phenomenal, teaching. It's and it's for us, for our health, for our wholeness, for our wellness. And if we are in our purpose, if you both are in your purpose with all your limbs and all your heart, with everything that you are, right, you're going to feel more accomplished. So that accomplishment brings health. It brings wellness. It helps us feel a certain way. It helps us focus on our purpose in life. All of that.
It's making me think of, so I actually know somebody, and I'm sure everybody listening can relate to this. For one, I know somebody who is buying every supplement, who is trying everything they see on Instagram. They're like, oh, I'm going to buy that, or every program, and they're not getting the results they want to get. And I am directing them to somebody, because I said, you're not focused. You keep looking outside yourself for something to fix you, and the work is internal. You're not going to get better until you want to go inside to the pain that's there, because I know their history. You know what I mean? So it speaks to what you're saying today is the body can't get better when we're holding on to these memories and these experiences, and we haven't, in your terms, gone through left eye, right eye experience, or we haven't healed them or released them or transformed them or forgiven them. Like we don't get better. So I was thinking of this person as you're saying that. And then I was also having a giggle of, remember when fibromyalgia first got diagnosed, and it was like the doctor they just threw out that term because they didn't know what to tell you. They couldn't find anything wrong with you, but then you feel so sick. It's like an example of fibromyalgia too. It's like you're living in this space inside, but you don't want to go to those places and look at them. And so it's manifesting things in the body that maybe can't be explained.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So back to, I think your original question was, what am I doing now? So that I'm addressing that. I'm doing that. I'm writing this book. I'm doing public speaking. So spiritually, I'm asked to bring in the spiritual aspect to wellness many times. And, this is different from what I do if I'm invited to a synagogue or a luncheon or a conference or something like that, having to do with history, Jewish history. And then there's this wellness piece that I believe is building, and I believe it's supposed to be building. And not just for me, not just because of me, but just because it is what it is right now. It's just, it's all about wellness. It's all about all these different things and these podcasts and all that. And I'm not knocking them. I think a lot of them are very helpful, and I listen to them. But I think we need this piece desperately. We need this piece, and we can't shy away from it. And sometimes people are so turned off by religion that you can't reach them with this spiritual piece because they're just so turned off. They've been hurt with religion, and it could be in Judaism, Christianity, and anything. It's just, they're hurt, and so they turn off everything. And it's very hard to break through those barriers unless it's packaged a certain way and it's in a certain place where they feel, okay, I think I see so-and-so listening. I think I'll listen too.
Mm-hmm.
Like this podcast that we're doing here, somebody may listen and say, I don't want to hear about God, but it's not, because maybe they're clinical and they wanted to hear something else. But the fact of the matter is that we need this piece, whether you want to call him or her God, or whether you want to say the universe, whatever sphere you're from, right? We need this piece because this is who we are. So it's very important at this point in time. I believe it's now. It's a now thing, to address this and to really dig deep with it. And on the way, you're going to get people turned off, and then you're going to get people turned on by it, and say, hey, wait, this makes sense. And other people say, I don't want to listen to this. What do you do? Yeah.
I'd love to share a metaphor with you that I came up with when I had, I call it my puddle of snot and tears moment, and surrendered in a puddle of snot and tears on the floor of my master bedroom closet in 2011. I was so sick, early onset dementia, brain fog so bad I lost the ends of moments. Like I'd wake up at the mall with my 3 little kids and I didn't know how I got there. Like I couldn't remember getting them in the car, getting them dressed, bringing them to the mall. It's like I would come to, like I would lose the ends of moments. Chronic fatigue, like all the diagnoses as a nurse, I rejected because I was helping all these other people with integrative solutions. Meanwhile, I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And I learned neuroadrenal testing, and I found a mentor to mentor me through it, Dr. Jess Armine in Philadelphia. That's around the time I met Wendy. And I was my first client. We did my test and everything was like in the toilet. Like everything was flatlined. My sympathetic, my parasympathetic neurotransmitters, whatever. I had gone to a doctor, fibromyalgia, because I had all pain all over. I was exhausted and everything was flatlined. And he goes, you're faking it. What's going on with you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? What does this say? He's like, Karen, I have people who have tests 50% better than this, and they're catatonically depressed and suicidal. Secretly, I had an eating disorder since the age of 11. I was 37 at the time. Almost killed me a couple of times. Suicidal ideation my whole life, but I couldn't do it because then I'd go to hell. And far be it for me to shame my family for the rest of eternity. It didn't matter that I would be in hell, that they would be, like so sad and whatever. So thankfully, my religion probably kept me alive. And I was so exhausted, and he saw that and he called me out. He's like, you're faking it. You come off as this bubbly, I'll go no quit, never let them see you sweat, all American girl. You're faking it. And I just broke down, and I had to get off the phone with him because I knew he was right. Mm-hmm. And Rabbi Diaz, I learned my favorite prayer. Fuck it. That day, it was like, I was so convinced I was going to be all alone. My husband would divorce me. My children would hate me. My parents would disown me, and I would be left alone. And that actually, all I had been doing to myself my entire life was to avoid being left behind, because I thought that I would get what I needed if I was thin, if I was pretty, if I was smart, if I was witty, if I had made these grades and had this career and everything was, there was a gap between me and God. There was a gap between who I truly was and who the world convinced me that I ought to be. And in this gap, this is my metaphor I came up with, is inflammation and illness and disease and depression and lack of resilience, lack of ability to recover from tragedy, and whether it's physical or emotional. In that moment, the gap collapsed. And I had everything I'd been looking for my whole life, myself. And in 3 weeks, all my symptoms are gone. I didn't take a supplement. I didn't see a doctor. I didn't start meditating or start an exercise program or start working on my karma. I just said, fuck it.
Yeah.
It's just going to be me all alone by myself. That didn't happen. Nothing in my reality changed. It was all internal and everything. So I took a moment to let's talk about me. But everything that you said is so necessary. It just was like, oh my God, she's talking about the gap. It's when you find yourself, you can you can call it the universe, you can call it God, but really God is calling you back home to close the gap. And that's where the foundation of health begins. Everything else is gravy.
Right. Absolutely. That's beautiful. I love that analogy. That's beautiful. And it's so true. And it's simple enough to actually use it so people can understand it.
Yeah. Where are you resisting who you are because of who you've been convinced that you ought to be?
Right.
And
absolutely.
It's scary. And it's scary. And it's nice because people like you can write books and teach and do lectures and go around and teach people gently and tools to start closing the gap. Or the universe just calls you home one day, and sometimes it kills you, and sometimes you're just surrendered in a puddle of snot and tears in the floor of your master bedroom closet. But people are wanting to come home to themselves, and without that tragic happening in one day, I see you as somebody who's giving those 10,000 tools that all open the same door. And it's the key to unlocking the door to who you're truly supposed to be.
I'm honored that you say that. Thank you. But I mean, I do it with all my heart and all my limbs. I can
see that in both eyes.
Everything. And what you see is what you get. Yeah. It's just really my heart. So that's where I'm at today. And I'm open to speak in different conferences, to whatever it is that I can do to help, to hold groups. And I love nurses. I've, in the different settings that I've worked in hospitals and hospices, you guys are angels. And I'm not just saying that. And you're just so tender. I can remember being in IDG meetings and just speaking to the group or giving an in-service or something. And I can remember seeing tears just tears just flood immediately when you hear something. And because you're called to it, and there's something about you in your heart. And when you do it, you do it with all your heart, with everything. And that is very, very fulfilling. It's got to be fulfilling.
Well, it is. When you are called to a vocation and you answer the call, there is nothing but fulfillment there.
Right.
And I think the reason that so many nurses are suffering today and getting burnt out and stuff is because there's not enough time to exercise the fundamentals and the facets of the vocation. It's meeting people in their brokenness with your own brokenness. And we don't have time because we have to chart and we have to, give bed baths and hang the medications and all the things, the medications that don't matter unless we meet in our brokenness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's my heart to continue on this trajectory that I feel I'm on. I feel my creator has me on it, and I'm going to just do it and just do everything that I can. And that's why I contacted all of you to begin with, to be a part of that. And I'm hoping to do some workshops and some things where the podcast will be longer. Nice. I started off just, so that I can get, so I can maybe offer some things. And if you ask me to, I will do some spiritual, and build it into some things that might be helpful for the nurses. and all of that. So that's how I connected with you, and I'm so glad I did, and that we're able to come together today and to talk.
Well, the great thing about nurses, if we could get you in front of an audience of like our RNegade community and even beyond that, I see Wendy and I talk about nurses as like the white blood cells of the medical system. And you teach nurses the things that and the really simple practical things. And I haven't even heard, in depth about your book and the things you have to teach, but I kind of have a sense about it. Just the 2 eye things. If you teach nurses that, not only for themselves to incorporate in their own lives to improve their own health and their own quality of life, but then they go and teach it to their patients.
Right.
So it's like you're inoculating communities with nurses who've taken it into their own lives and then spread it to other people. Oh my gosh, that would be awesome. Can we please?
Yeah. I was going to say, even nurses with patients that have an illness that's not going to take their life, but even ones where they are with hospice, because I lost my mother 20 plus years ago, and she was petrified to die, petrified through to the end. And so I'm sitting here thinking of her like, wow, if hospice nurses had these techniques that you're talking about and could work with families and even the dying patient to not be so afraid of where they're going, actually rejoice in where they're going. Such an impact. That's why when you wrote to us, I was like, oh yes, we have to have her podcast part of the RNegade library.
Yeah. Thank you. I so appreciate it.
I would love to hear, and I'm sure since you do a lot of speaking and teaching, I'm sure you have your stories that kind of illustrate the fundamentals of who you are and what you've learned in your own life and what you share, like the case studies. Do you have any stories you can share with us?
I have one that comes to mind. It's when you are, and for nursing, I think there's some of this that fits in perfectly, is that when you are reaching someone and talking with them, when it's close to death or when it's sickness, illness that has touched that person's life, or grief that has touched that person's life, it shifts it shifts into a spiritual thing, even if it's not talked about. What happens is that part of you, that when we were talking earlier, I felt it in both of you. It's an antenna that comes up. It's a spiritual thing, and you connect that way. And I'm going somewhere with this. And one example is one of the things as a rabbi that I did is I went and I was a chaplain for a lot of places in West LA and Calabasas, West Valley, and I would go see Holocaust patients. And one particular gentleman, I would always go when he was saying his morning prayers. And one day I went and he wasn't in his room. So I found him, and he was in the dining area, and he was so hungry, and I could tell. And the nurses were, or the caregivers were so busy that he had to wait his turn to eat. And so I asked them, I said, is it okay if I feed him? They said, absolutely, go right ahead. And so we knew each other by eyesight, and he would say little things to me, and he would show me his tattoos from the camps and everything. And I started to feed him, and I was trying to get his mouth so he wouldn't choke and to clean his chin. And I looked up at his eyes, and tears were coming out. And he looked at me, and tears were coming out. Yeah. And when he looked at me, he had a grin in his eyes where he knew that I wasn't feeling sorry for him. Yeah. He knew that I was honored to feed him. Yeah. I was honored to put the spoon in his mouth and to feed him. And an interaction took place there that was so spiritual. Yeah. Without words, where I knew he knew that I was not crying because I felt sorry for him. And I knew that he had a bond with me that we had created. And without words, it was spiritual. And we connected, and I fed him his food, and I cleaned his chin, and I stroked his face. He was in his 90s, and late 90s actually. And it was such an honor for me. And I'm not saying that to try to sound good, to try to sound like I'm special. I'm not. But I felt so honored that I remember going into my car and weeping and just saying, thank you. Thank you, God, for the opportunity and the privilege to feed this man. And it just completely did something with me. And I share that because I noticed that when you touch people's lives to that degree, there's a lot that goes on without words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes on, and there's no, you can just communicate a certain way with your eyesight. I would look at them when they were passing in their bed. I would just look at them, and we would lock eyes, and I knew they were leaving. I knew, and they knew I knew. And it was a bond, and I would go to them, lay my hands on them, anoint them with oil, and pray for them. And if they were Jewish, this is the beauty of having both backgrounds. If they were Jewish, I knew the Hebrew prayers for them before they left. And if they were Christian, I knew the prayers to say before they left. And so many times it's without words, and it's spirit to spirit. And there's nothing more powerful. So even though I'm looking at this desk and this computer, you are more real to me in the spirit than you are physically. And I mean that with all my heart. It's very real than the tangible. And so when we minister to people's lives and to their hearts and to their needs, it becomes it's almost, pardon me, like the spirit just rises or elevates above the tangible.
Sure.
And there's a communication there. It's just so very beautiful. So that's a story that I know that, revolutionized me. I remember going into my car before I even documented the visit. I just wept because of the privilege that I had to feed this man that had an incredible history of watching his mother and sisters raped and killed, and watching, things that he shared months before he started to lose his ability to speak, the way that he was when I first went to go see him. So we had bonded. So I think that when you, as nurses, connect with people, that's why the nurses need ministry too. The nurses need help and strengthening, and it doesn't have to be religious. It can be spiritual, so that it can be a Buddhist nurse and a Christian nurse and a Jewish nurse and a Hindu nurse, and you can still reach the spiritual realm and help each other.
Absolutely.
That is so instructional without explaining it. And I'm going to try to get through this crying some more. Oh my gosh. Nurses don't need to be ministered to if they are allowed to do what you just said. If we have the time to shave an old veteran, that is all we need. Go ahead, Wendy. I'm going to collect myself.
No, I was thinking about this. We said it in this podcast that spirituality needs to combine with medicine. We've kept them different for so long, and we do it in so many different ways. But here's the good news, Irma, because it's like Karen and I, for the last 10 days, everybody we talk to, this conversation on some level is coming into our conversation. So God, spirituality, religion, whatever somebody wants to call it, is making its way strongly back into humanity. And because Karen in my world is so focused with nurses, and so the medical side, it's making its way back into caring for human beings, right? Like we used to care for the human being as a whole in medicine eons ago. Now it's divided into all these specialties and all these expertise. And so we've broken it down and we don't look at it as the whole, but it is coming back to looking at it as the whole. And so is the dimension of breaking science and spirituality apart. They are one. We've kept them different. And in my mind, that's how darkness works.
Yes.
But it is coming back strongly, and it is being felt, and people aren't afraid to say God. They're not afraid to talk about what you just said, because that's the energy in my background, or how I look, that's the energy of God. You just merged in the grace of God with that other human being. And imagine if merging that way happened everywhere. But since we're talking about medicine, imagine if that could happen between peers at work, between interprofessionals, between the patient interaction. Like, just imagine. I have chills thinking of that. Like, it's time.
Yeah, I didn't just get all blubbery because I was sad. It's because that
it's beautiful.
Touched me so deeply. It's like two people whose gaps are collapsed, you know?
Yeah.
And that is, it is almost too much for our physical containers to handle, and it starts leaking out of our eyeballs. It is what you get a couple moments like that in your life, and you're like, oh, right, that's why I'm here. And nursing is like a secular, it's a secular vocation.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm so glad I asked you to tell that story, because that's everything. That's the biochemistry of God. Not only does it make our lives make more sense. Oh yeah, that's why we're here, because it gets you everything you think you're fighting for, that you're trying to make money for, that you're trying to be thin for, that you're trying to succeed for, and they're trying to drive that car for. All the things you think you'll get from that, you get from that one interaction with another human being in their honor, not in their pity, because pity's like just selfish. Please bring us home. That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you for asking. Thank you, because that means a lot. And there's stories like that that just are on and on and on. You know, one thing that I did want to share is that I'm teaching a group of clergy from all over the country that are I'm teaching them virtually, and we meet once a month. It's called Iron Sharpens Iron, and so one of the things that I'm teaching about is the restoration of the first century ministry and church. And so I talk about Luke, the physician. I talk about what the physician was like in the first century. I talk about the house of Hillel, who was, it was Hillel and Shemaiah actually, but Hillel was from that era and very much like Jesus, very much in terms of love, but he was a Jew and Jesus was a Jew, but, of course, controversial, at the time, but they were very much alike. So I'm able to put it into an interfaith package, if you will, and bring in the teachings, the deep teachings of both Hillel and Yeshua and Jesus, and teach from that. And the whole point of it is to talk about the restoration, that the way it is today is not the way it was in the first century or the way it was intended to be, and that it's not about revival, it's about restoration. and so we don't need some of the things that are going on in religious circles today that turn off people. We need to return back to the way it was intended. And so that's one of the other things that I'm doing. And I only do it once a month, and they come together virtually from different parts, New York and just different areas, and they really want to learn. So I use the Torah, I use the New Testament, I use the Talmud, I use different writings, Pirkei Avot, just different types of writings and deep teachings to be able to qualify what I'm trying to convey in terms of restoration. So I think that plays a piece into all of this that we're talking about. It's small piece, but a piece.
Yeah.
That there is something going on right now, and there's a harmony with it because people are catching on. We're talking about it.
Yeah. Who can join Iron Sharpens Iron, or is that already a closed group that just meets once a month?
It's Clergy, and it is it's for the purpose because I'm very blunt about some things that I wouldn't say in a podcast. Some things that are because it's not public. It's something where I would say here's what we're looking at today. Here's what happened from the 4th century, from Constantine. Here's how it all developed. Here's this, here's that, and here's where it's at today. And talking about a lot of things, the prosperity message, the this, the that, all the things that have taken things off balance and ended up hurting a lot of people, and people are pulling away because of that. And so they're loving it, and and sometimes it's stepping on what they know, but they're accepting it. And that is, to me, a gift because my job is not to criticize. My job is to just, here's the facts. Here's what it looked like, and here's what it looks like today. And here's what I believe restoration looks like, and where we're going back. And so that's another component in my life anyway, that I believe brings a balance to all of this that we're talking about. Because clergy are leaders, and there's a lot of stigma behind mental health. There's a lot of, stigma that goes on that keeps clergy from being able to really go deeper in helping their parishioners, their congregants. And so all of that has to be addressed. So little by little, I'm kind of spoon feeding it.
Well, Rabbi, teacher, it sounds like there's a place for that kind of group in the medical professions.
I was just thinking,
if we could help you get that together in all of your spare time.
Okay.
Selfishly. Like, all right. Well, we are over time. I could keep you on for another hour.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But if I'd love to speak to you again. And if people would like to learn more about you and your ministry and your services, where can they find you, reach out to you, or just stalk you on the internet?
Well, I have my Soul Synergy Network podcast and my YouTube station, so they can go to Soul Synergy Network and they'll find me there. And they can also write to me at Soul Synergy Network at gmail.com. And or they can go on the websites. I have several websites. I have the Interfaith, and then I have my author's website.
We'll put those all in the bibliography.
Yeah,
how to do that.
But I welcome emails, any kind of communication, anything that I can do to help you. I'm here for you, and I mean that, heart and limbs, and anything that I can do to help your nurses, your nursing community. I'm here for you. So I just want you to know that. And it's been my honor to be with you. And I really feel like I knew you. So I felt very comfortable. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Same. Very and hospitable. I know you told me to call you Irma, but is it okay if I call you Rabbi? Because I feel I have a lot to learn from you. Okay.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will be in touch with you. This is
okay.
Not the first and last time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Renegades.